Dit programma wordt mede mogelijk gemaakt door het International Film Festival Rotterdam.
Welkom bij Big Talk. 10 dagen lang is Rotterdam helemaal filmgek. In het oude Luxor praat vanavond Hans Maarten van den Brink met de Deense regisseur Christopher Boe over de film Spies en Glistrup.
Mine damer og herrer, vi er nu i rejsebranchen med egne fly.
Vi sælger billige rejser til Mallorca.
Vi sælger drøm om fest, jo. Spis, vær fræk og...
Spis, rejs og vær glad.
Ja, det er det, jeg sagde. Spis, rejs og vær glad. Det var mig, der sagde det. Spis, rejs og vær glad. Jeg vil ikke ringe til Ekstrabladet, hvis vi skal komme herned straks. Og så sige til dem, at du tror, Simon Spies, han er ved at skære helt ud. Det er min nye målbolddame. Hurra!
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Thanks for being here.
I need my belly button to hit this spot.
Yeah. That's not very important for these people, but
No,
for
but
the millions of people who are watching us on their television screen. Welcome. We're going to see your movie, Spies and Glistrup, Sex, Drugs and Taxation. Of those three, most people would like to skip one, and it's not the sex. I would like to start with a confession. I watched your film without reading anything beforehand. No documentation, nothing on the background. I thought, I'll do that later.
Yes.
So I was watching this and I thought, this is what in English is called a romp. It's storytelling getting out of hand. It's farcical. You don't believe that all this really happened. It's over the top. And then towards the end, I saw the newspaper clips and I thought, wait a minute, this is not fiction. This is a reenactment of history. And that's what it is. All this, what we are going to see, an episode in the 60s, 70s and 80s in your home country, Denmark, has really happened. And you've recreated it for a film.
Almost really happened.
Almost really happened. I'm going to ask you later what you added and what you took away from it, but it's about finance, it's about sex, it's about taxes, it's about politics. Did you want to make a political statement with this film?
In that case, it's Can you hear me? I think it's. I'm not sure what the statement is, but I think that I wanted to do a movie with about people who has a very different political agenda than the one we're used to right now. I know that a lot of people can say, well, there's a lot of things happening with the Tea Party and radical right-wing parties and populist movement coming up. But what's intriguing about these two guys is the fact that it turns into a party, but it all begins with these two strange guys just saying "fuck off" to the government, and I feel.
And we want to make money.
And we want to make money. That's an important note and that's sort of a counter story to what we've usually been told about the 60s. The 60s about the strive for liberty is very connected with the hippies, right? The hippie values of sexual freedom and saying no to the government, but yes to a community and more left-wing ideologies. So I just think it's interesting that you have these two bald old guys having a lot of hippie values in the sense that they want openness, they want sexual freedom, they want to take drugs, they want to do all kinds of funny things, but they also want to make money and they want the government to leave them alone. And at least in Denmark, I thought we need to also have that story.
Okay, we're not going to give away the story, but just to make it a little bit more intelligible for the audience. Spies and Glistrup are two guys. One is a businessman who turns into a sort of guru. He's in the travel business, and Glistrup is a genius tax lawyer, and his ideal is his anarchistic ideal is no taxes. Nobody pays taxes, and it's the story of these two men. And as you say, it's a sort of strange mixture of hedonism and anarchy and politics. Was that what attracted you? Is that what you're saying?
It attracted me that they are hard to define. and the fact that my parents always hated them. So when I was a kid, my parents are very, very, what do you call that?
Politically correct.
You could call them that. So these were just, it was obvious to me in my home that these were just bad company and off limits, and you shouldn't touch them and you shouldn't associate yourself with them. But at the same time, in the public and my parents, there was a lot of respect for them because one of them was a brilliant businessman. I mean,
They were both brilliant in their...
In this respective field, they were very brilliant, and there was a lot of respect for them. So they were at the same time idiots. A lot of people hated them. My parents hated them. But at the same time, you couldn't not respect them within their fields because they were brilliant in some ways. And I felt very attracted to this. How come you can be brilliant and an idiot at the same time?
It is about politics, but what attracted you was the personalities.
Yeah.
And maybe also the fun of making a film which has 60s, 70s, and 80s.
I'm a married man with 3 kids. The only way I can get to see
naked
people,
actresses,
naked actresses
of course,
is filming them. So that's my excuse. What's yours?
I was thinking, I'm not a director. I'm sitting here with a married man with 3 children and a beard. I mean, no, but it's also, and that's a joy for everybody who's lived through the period. You know, the dresses, the cars, the whole entourage. That must be great fun for a filmmaker.
It was, and it would have been if we had more money. But the thing is, when we didn't have a lot of money, so not to sit here and complain, but making a historical movie, everything just becomes a situation that you have to deal with. People can't just walk in from the street. I've always loved to mix real life and fiction, so often I've taken my actors and put them out in real situations, or just used a corner in a cafe. Suddenly, you can't do that. Anybody who's in the frame needs to have the right kind of wardrobe, needs to have his hair in the right direction. I couldn't be in the shot because nobody would look like me, bald and stuff like that.
There was boldness in the 60s.
Yeah, but you would have long hair and you would comb it over and...
Oh, but that's wonderful.
And stuff like that. It just, everything was a situation. But we tried to deal with that, and we tried to figure out ways so it still became like a big movie in the sense I very much wanted this to have a sort of a dynamic feel to it, that it didn't feel like a stale, low-budget movie, but that you hopefully don't think about the money, but there is a good drive to the story and to the momentum of the scenes. So
how did you develop the story? I mean, there were all the historical facts, biographical stuff about these real existing characters. Did you start by creating your own storyline or just following all the episodes?
From the very beginning, I knew basically where I wanted it to end. There is this dramatic ending, which we
will not tell.
We will not tell, but anyhow, one of the characters begins a party, and there's the election. So basically, the first election that he goes to with his new party, I wanted to end it there. But from there, it could be go in many directions. So it was basically research, talking with people they took drugs with, slept with, had politics with, discussions with, talked with families and stuff like that. And then having
you actually interviewed the
yes.
real...
We talked with a lot of people and had actually 2 journalists assigned to this at the beginning that made timelines and went back to the material of newspapers and source material to figure out what was actually been said and done during this period.
And then there's also, of course, the apart from the whole set dressing, the physical aspect of the 2 characters. They're well known, I guess, still in Denmark. So if you want it to be real life, they should look like the real characters, and they do.
Yeah,
I saw the photographs.
They do.
How long did you rehearse with them? How did you get them to come
so
close to reality?
There's like 2 main situations with that. One is the accent. They talk in a very distinct way. If you know Danish, you would definitely, as soon as Mogens says something, you know it's Mogens. He has a very distinct voice, and the same with speech. So we have these 2 characters. So
this high-pitched, irritating speech voice is not like what all Danes speak?
It's not just the actor playing funny, no.
Okay, yeah.
I told him to do it.
Okay.
So that's one of the things. They needed to talk like these 2 characters, and then they had to look like them. They also looked very distinctive. So we actually obviously had a lot of makeup tests and how much should we actually do with hair and makeup and stuff like that. So in the end, we try to find a very toned down, so it doesn't become all about hair and makeup. But there's a
But
process.
it's also very much about movement,
Yes.
especially in the case of Glistrup. You say, whoa. Did this take endless rehearsals, and did they study?
I casted
film
a great actor who was already fat. That
yeah.
helped a lot.
No method acting, no Robert De Niro stuff
No.
in this.
No, and I'm kidding. Nicolas Bro is one of the greatest actors in Denmark, and I've worked with him in all ways. So I basically, as soon as I knew I wanted to make this movie, I called him up and said, I have my next movie. And he's always been a little irritated with me because I've made sort of more straight movies where I cast, would he say, very classic, beautiful people, and then I made sort of rough documentary, and then I cast him. And he was
he's
a little
not
pissed.
a classic, handsome leading
Why
man,
am I
no,
not
no.
your lead actor in one of the big scope movies? And I said, I have a big scope movie. Now, it's widescreen, and we have a big budget. You're playing
And
the
you
lead,
can be a big man.
but you're playing most Glistrup. And it became very silent at the other end of the phone. Most Glistrup is the most hated man in the film industry and in anywhere in Denmark. He's like
Why in the film industry?
the film industry is classically, left-wing, cultural, radical. So, I mean, most Glistrup is just, he's the worst kind of person you can touch. He's like kryptonite for Superman, if you are a Danish
Superman. Yeah.
Superman.
Yeah.
Or just ordinary working in the cultural business. Anyhow, I told him to do this. So
Long silence.
long silence, he accepted, and then it took me 3 years to finish the script. So we had a long time to
You
to
had
practice.
too much inspiration or too much information?
It turned out it was a little more difficult than I thought, actually, writing based on real events.
Yeah.
Because, as mentioned in the beginning of the movie, it's true and it's not true, but I wanted the essence of this to be very truthful. So the characters and the portrayal of the characters, to me, is very truthful. And finding that right balance between having events that you obviously need to invent, or you need to manipulate them to work in the movie and to make them say what you want them to say, but respect the truthfulness of what I perceive to be Måns Glistrup and Simon Spies, just turned out to be really difficult.
Yeah. I was wondering, these guys, so excuse me, are two jerks, idiots. Could you sort of love them as a director also, the characters?
I love them.
You do? Yeah?
I think they're great. I think obviously they have.
I'm not talking about the actors, I'm talking about the
I
characters.
I understand.
Whoa.
I spent so many years with those. I wouldn't do it if I just thought they were idiots. This is not an intriguing portrayal of people I think we should just dislike. There is something very interesting about people who goes against the norm, who does something unexpected, who does something almost suicidal, but does it with conviction and does it in some ways with brilliance and charm. I think it's very intriguing, and I think
It's very intriguing to a father of three who... Yeah?
Also that. But basically, I think it's very important that we have these originals, and originals are something that also cost. It's a fantasy to think you can have these wonderful persons who go against the grain, and it's without cost. Obviously, being associated or dealing with people who are idealistic or really outside the norm, it takes a toll on everybody, and I think you should accept that. But I think it's worth the price.
Okay. You just mentioned the tension between your scenario and historical facts. That is always a problem because film being such a powerful medium. A lot of people, I guess, in the United States think that the Kennedy murder was solved by Robert Stone because it's in the movie and they've seen it. Didn't you have a problem with that? That sort of everybody in Denmark knew what really happened, and where did you divert?
Did they have a problem with the fact that people already had a preconception of how these people were?
No, that you're dealing with real historical facts, so you have a very limited liberty, but also responsibility, because people are going to think, well, I've seen the movie, I know how it was.
If you see the movie, you don't know how it was, because that's what I state. And obviously the movie has this sense that, yes, you get the sense of their lives, but what really happened, who knows? This is almost 20 years of life condensed into 90 minutes. I mean, who's fooling who. These are two actors reciting my lines. This is not real life. But I researched it enough, and I have an opinion about these two guys that hopefully you go out, you have a sense of who these guys were, and you have an ungefähr feeling of the main events of their lives. And those are actually true, even though they look outrageous. The other thing is that people have a preconception of how things are in real life. They have a historical sense of, well, what happened? Well, the wonderful thing in reality is that often that preconception is wrong, or they don't know enough. So when you have a movie, they suddenly find out, wow, there were things to the story I didn't know. So I think
what did you invent? What should we look for? Like, hey, this is not.
When every time those two guys are in a room and there's nobody else, who's to say what's been said?
Okay, yeah, that's an important clue. How was the film received in Denmark?
Surprisingly well.
How's that? Two such controversial figures, and it turns out you love them.
Well, one being kryptonite and the other being a Nazi, you would imagine that people would have objections with a movie that says these guys are actually quite fun. It turned out, obviously, there were people who actually said, and there were political. In my experience, it was the first, in the sense that there were definitely reviews that said, we like the movie, we hate the guys, we can't accept this kind of movie.
Because you hate the guys, you cannot accept the movie.
Yeah. But mostly it was very well received, and the audience liked it a lot, which is definitely new for me.
Your former films were not.
I appreciate it, but I mean, I have had movies that the entire scope of the movie's lifespan couldn't even fill this cinema. So I come from a place where I've been very intrigued by small elements of cinema history and the telling of genres and reinventing genres, and I just realized that taste is not. I don't share it with a lot of people.
Okay.
But
now you have a theme and a story that you can share. It shows. I enjoyed the movie thoroughly. Just one last theme I would like to touch upon. This festival has one of the themes is Europe. Where do we stand politically also? The Progressive Party that starts in your story is still alive and in Parliament. It has a different name now. It is called the
Danish Populist Party.
Yeah, and
it's a. I mean, basically, there was a breakout. It's part of the. It's the daughter. It's the bastard child of.
Yeah.
The Progressive Party.
Well, we had something similar here. The famous Rotterdammer Pim Fortuyn and now Geert Wilders, who's in a league with your successor to the Progressive Party of the movie. I started with politics. I would like to end there. Is it also a sort of message about how people can be manipulated, and was it picked up like that in Denmark?
I think it's a different story in Denmark because he was very known in the last couple of years. He became very anti-immigration. And this movie has nothing to do about that. I'm not trying to shove it under the carpet. I'm not trying to sugarcoat his story. Obviously, that was a big part of his legacy, all this kind of anti-immigration. I have no interest in that kind of politics. I think it's appalling. And the movie, and there's a very good reason, I think, for why he began that kind of politics, because he was in jail, he was beaten up, he was basically, he was just a broken man. But the movie is all about trying to look at when he started up, what kind of man was he and what was his ideas. And I think that became the political debate in Denmark, because that's not something that we looked upon for almost 30 years. We only looked upon his last anti-immigration years, which has all kinds of...
But I think we see that all over Europe, that protest parties sort of turn into a sort of Tea Party, populist, left-leaning politics when it comes to social security, etc. And the one unifying thing, anti-immigration, anti-Islam. Same thing happened in Denmark.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, your film doesn't touch on that, but we see a great story leading up to that in a certain way. You're in for a ride, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy the film. And thank you very much for this conversation.
Thank you for coming.
De nachtfilm die u zo gaat zien komt uit Argentinië en heet Una Semana Solos van Selina Murga. Het gaat over een groepje rijke luiskinderen uit een dure wijk van Buenos Aires die een week alleen worden gelaten door hun drukke ouders.
Dit programma werd mede mogelijk gemaakt door het International Film Festival Rotterdam.